Hey everybody, this is Alchemisted, and this is once again an Audiolog, and this time I'm going to start doing something that I wanted to do a couple weeks ago, then I got really sick. Uh, Introductory, there we go. Sorry, I'm just correcting some spelling that was, I did a take of this before this, and I'm just correcting some spelling that was driving me nuts while I was reading off the show notes. So I'm still kind of sick. This is the first time I've really felt up to recording something since DC Universe Online. And you're going to be hearing me clearing my throat and coughing a little bit and sniffling a little over the course of this because I'm still very sick. I'm still not 100%. It's just like when I was doing Super Smash Bros. Melee. At this point, though, it's just all the crap that's still in me from being sick, basically. It's like somebody described it as like sand, like the back of your throat. You know, that's pretty much it. So, excuse me. So yeah, as you can clearly hear, I am not feeling well at all. However, this is something I wanted to do, and I did a take of this before, and I shouldn't have deleted it, but I felt like I could do better, and then I got sick and I couldn't do it at all. So, and what this is I participated in the open beta for the Old Republic. There was a beta testing weekend, and I was invited, and I spent a hell of a lot of that weekend playing through as much of the Old Republic as I could, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to get this game. I knew I was going to have to upgrade my computer before I could play it, and I'm sure as hell not getting it this holiday season. I've got a lot of work to do on this PC before I can actually play this fucker. But I did like 8-hour marathons of this game, like 8-hour marathons all weekend. I made sure I wouldn't have shit to do all weekend, and then I just played this game all fucking day, all weekend long. You know, I would take short breaks, I would take naps, and then go back to it, because I wanted to get a good feel of this game, and I wanted to just see as much as I could while the beta was there, because like I said, I knew I wasn't going to be getting this game right now. Right now, I am planning on getting this game eventually, but not right now, no. Too many things going on right now. So yeah, immediately after that beta was over, I jotted down my thoughts on it. I jotted down like a list of notes because I knew I was going to have a lot to talk about. So I wrote down a quick show notes document just to organize my thoughts because I knew I had a lot to go through here. But the biggest thing, the elephant in the room, is something I want to get out of the way right away. Now, there has been a big to-do about Tor on the Stowe forums, on the Star Trek Online forums, and elsewhere. And Star Wars versus Star Trek is the oldest argument in nerddom, essentially. It's been present ever since the debut of Episode 4, A New Hope. And there was talk of this being a Stowe killer. Like the Stowe killer, as well as a WoW killer. And while the latter, I can kind of understand, the former, not really. Having sat down and played this game that much, the comparison between the two of them isn't nearly as lopsided as one would think. Or as people have thought it would be. Not at all. Both of them do things well, both of them do things poorly, and I want to quantify that. Now that I've said that, I want to preface everything that I'm going to say. Having said that, and everything I'm going to say afterwards, I want you to understand something when you hear what I'm going to say about both of these games as I go through this lengthy show notes document, and goddamn, this is a bad time to do this. I'm not going to have a voice when I'm done. But I want you to understand that I'm a fan of both. When I was growing up, I had an Enterprise D toy, and I had an X-Wing toy, but my favorite ship from Star Wars, from the movies anyways, from A New Hope, would have to be the Y-Wing. I loved the fucking Y-Wing. I had a couple toy Y-Wings, actually. I loved it. I never really kind of got the X-Wing. I preferred the slow armored bomber looking thing. I would always jump into a Y-Wing in Battlefront, and Battlefront will come up again later. But yeah, uh, I am a fan of both of these. I grew up watching both of them. Somewhere I still have the VHSs, I think. The original VHSs of the Star Wars trilogy. Maybe not the original ones. The ones with Michael Bolton. You remember the ones with Michael, where George Lucas was doing interviews with Michael Bolton before each of them, before the movie. You know, those VHSs, I grew up with those. I think I still have them. You know, I never had the Laserdisc, which is considered the quintessential Star Wars version, you know, before George Lucas started screwing with them with the special editions. God damn it. And he's going to do it again for the Blu-ray. Jesus. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Star Wars. I have tons of the books. I grew up reading, like, oh God, what the hell? The Jedi Knight books. I had, like, Junior Jedi Knights, which was the Anakin and Tahiri books. I think I mispronounced her name. I grew up reading the Timothy Zahn Hand of Thrawn books. Not the Hand of Thrawn, but the Thrawn trilogy. The Hand of Thrawn was like the sequel, duh. But the Thrawn trilogy, you know, the one where you had like Luke running into like Mara Jade, and you had like the clone Luke and all of that. That one. I just spoiled it a little bit for you. Ha! That's what you get. But yeah, just to make sure you understand what I say, I'm a fan of both of these. So I am going into this. I went into the Old Republic with a very neutral state of mind, as you know. I'm not thinking of it ever as Star Wars versus Star Trek. I'm thinking of it as science fiction that I love, that I've enjoyed since childhood, and I'm looking for a really good sci-fi game to play. And I gotta tell you, before I go on, the Old Republic really scratches that itch. It scratched it just as much as Stowe did. Excuse me. So I was really happy with playing this game, and I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic to be able to play both of these games eventually, because Star Trek Online is going free to play, and the Old Republic is a subscriber model. So you could like install both of these games and play one for free and one on a monthly subscription. You know, I'm really excited for that. I think that's fantastic. You know, that's like my childhood all over again with Star Wars toys and Star Trek toys. So, you know, I love that idea. I love that concept. So, now that I'm moving on from that. I'm going to say that both of these games do things very well. Both do things very poorly. Like I said, the comparison between these two is not as lopsided as advertised at all. These are both good games, but they both have a lot of problems. Before I go on, I do want to say that both of these games are very single-player heavy. As in, you should really go into this thinking of them as a single-player game that has like online co-op support. Essentially, think of them that way, because that's the way they have been set up. Like most of the content, the story-based content in Star Trek Online, you want to go through alone first, just so you can read all the dialogue and get the story of the game. Because whenever you team with people, they're just going to be madly clicking through that dialogue. The Old Republic, it's the same thing. It's sort of written from the point of view of you experiencing it as a gamer without anybody with you. It does support having multiple party members in the conversations, but and that's something I'll get to later. But it is really made from the perspective of a single-player game. So don't expect lots and lots of byplay in like the chat and what have you. So yeah, most of the time you're going to be soloing everything. It's especially hard to form a party, but that may just be because it was the beta. I don't know, but excuse me. So yeah, so bear those in mind. So we're gonna start where your character starts. We're gonna start the character customization, and right away, I'm really sick. Right away, I'm really sick. Yeah, that was great. Cut, take two. Yep. Ready to go. Alright, we're going to start at the character customization. which right away is pretty shallow compared to Star Trek Online, but not just to Star Trek Online. It's pretty shallow compared to EVE and even previous BioWare games. The character customization in the Old Republic is very much like Knights of the Old Republic in terms of how limited it was. Now, Knights of the Old Republic's character customization was alright back then. It was okay. It wasn't it wasn't like super stellar mind-blowing stuff, but it was okay. But in this day and age, the character customization for the Old Republic is very lackluster compared to other MMOs. You know, it's essentially Knights of the Old Republic, but by a slight order of magnitude more. What's a good saying? More wide in your ability to customize your character. Maybe, I don't know. I'm sick. Maybe that's not the right way to say it. I'm sick. Whatever. But yeah, it doesn't have. You have like maybe a handful more options in customizing your character, but it's the same thing. You know, everything's preset. Everything's on sliders. You know, and nothing's on sliders. It's just like, would you choose option 1, option 2, or option 3, or option 4 for your body type? You know, it's that sort of thing where it looks like a slider, but it really isn't. And everything is just on. Everything's just on that. It's all pre-select. It's all pre-selects, and nothing that actually lets you customize or deform your character's face like in the Mass Effect titles. Not at all. So yeah, or like in EVE Online, or like in Star Trek Online. So the character customization was really just basic, even compared to previous BioWare games. And after the first 2 Mass Effect games, at this point, I really expect more out of BioWare, to be honest. That isn't a mark against this game, but expect to see a lot of people who look alike. You know, it really depends on whether or not it's something you would rather mark against this game. Companion customization is also nearly non-existent. Again, Star Trek Online gives you almost the same amount of customization with your bridge officers as with your main character. So, again, this is something Star Trek Online does way better, is the ability to customize characters. And after you reach level 10, after you leave Ord Mantell, not only do you get a companion character who follows you around and backs you up, but you also have to choose between 3 customization options for him. And these customization options basically just generally change his appearance, and that's almost nearly as deep as the character customization goes. You will occasionally come across little bits and bobs of armor that are let's say like Carthonasi, or that's assuming your companion's named Carthonasi or whatever. I forgot what my companion's name was already. But you get what I'm saying. It says this guy's bracers, and it'll give you an option to choose between your companion's next level armor equipment and something that you can use to buy better equipment. Which became incredibly irritating because I don't want to waste that on my companion's equipment. But so yeah, the customization is nearly non-existent for companions at all, except for when you're forced to choose between getting something to put on them to change their armor appearance a little bit and maybe give them a buff to their stats, or getting better equipment, which you desperately need. Next up is there are 2 classes of Jedi and 2 other classes. This threw me for a loop. This seems really lopsided. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be playing this game just to get their hands on a little lightsaber. I know that. You know that. But having 2 classes of Jedi, having like half of the character class selection taken up by Jedi felt really lopsided. So you can choose between a Sentinel and a Consular, completely fucking skipping the Guardian class from Knights of the Old Republic. And this is one of the first problems I had with this game is, you know, we could have put in another class there, and I'll start talking about this as we go on. But here's the way it worked in Knights of the Old Republic. Was that you started as a Jedi, and then after a while you got to pick whether you were a Sentinel or a Guardian or a Consular. And then you played the rest of the game as that class. If they really wanted to make the Jedi class really deep in the Old Republic, they should have had you do that. They should have had you start as a Jedi, go through your training, at level 10, make you choose between a Sentinel, Guardian, or Consular, and then at like level 20 or level 30 have you further specialize if they really wanted to make the Jedi class a really deep class to play. But there's only two classes of Jedi. They're both essentially preset versions of the Knights of the Old Republic Jedi classes, which sucks. There are two other classes you can pick on the Republic side. I only play the Republic side, so I don't know about the Sith. I was tempted, though. More on that later. There are two other classes on the Republic side. Those are the Troopers and Smugglers. The Troopers are essentially you're a stormtrooper. Like if you watched the Clone Wars cartoon, one of the few good things to come out of the prequel movies. If you watch the Clone Wars cartoon, like the various clone troopers you see in the Clone Wars cartoon, that's what the trooper is. I mean, not the clone part, of course, but that's what they essentially are. They're the Republic soldiers, and they have abilities that are like that. They essentially have I win buttons, basically. Like I ran a Flashpoint, which is kind of a cooperative mission. It's a raid, essentially, with a trooper, and everything was dying before I could even start shooting at it, basically. They get a lot of I win button abilities. Plus, they have their companion is essentially toting a bazooka, which I imagine would certainly help. But the class I ended up playing the most was the Smuggler class, which is easily the most technical of the Republic classes. Like I said, Jedi, you could probably just mash them with a fucking lightsaber. Troopers, you have like the I win buttons, like blasters and grenade and rocket sprays everywhere and shit. But the Smuggler class has a lot of preset abilities that forces them to learn how those abilities work and how best to use them in a situation. And I believe they may also be one of the few classes that can actually take cover. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I might be. And they have a whole list of abilities that they can choose from to use while they're in cover. So, smugglers really... Being a good smuggler class really comes down to knowing the terrain and how you can use it and how you can use your abilities and what they do. So you have to learn all this stuff because you don't have an I win button. You're pretty far from having an I win button. But at about level 10 or 11, I got to choose a specialty class, and you can choose two specialty classes for the smuggler. One of them was the Scoundrel, which was a stealth class, which I instantly went ew. And the other was the Gunslinger class. In retrospect, I probably should have picked Scoundrel. I picked the Gunslinger class because I wanted to be like the guy in the intro cinema, the big, long-coated guy with the dual blaster pistols going, yeah, with the blaster pistols, and I wanted to be like that guy. Yeah, that was a mistake. The Gunslinger class, basically what he does, his entire shtick is he can use two blaster pistols at once. That's it. That's all he really does. That's all he really does at all. You know, it didn't really change the gameplay of the class at all. It didn't really give me new options that I didn't really have before at all. So, yeah, that Gunslinger class was a letdown. And it didn't really alter my odds of succeeding in fights that much either. You know, I wasn't doing that much more damage with it, I noticed. Even when I was, like, spamming abilities like Quick Shot, which isn't an I win button so much as an, okay, please die button. Please, like, die, I'll be your friend. You know, it's a desperation button that doesn't really work, basically. Like, but I'll get more into that later. Let's just say that the combat is kind of all over the place in the Old Republic in terms of the in terms of the feeling of impact. So I'll leave that for later. So going back to my comments on there being two Jedi classes taking up half the fucking class selections, where's the pilot class? This is something I want you to keep in mind for later. Is like flying around and blowing stuff up has been part of the Star Wars gaming franchise for a long time. In fact, it was the Star Wars gaming franchise for a long time. You know, the Empire Strikes Back game was set on Hoth with snow speeders. The original Star Wars game was the Death Star Trench Run. So, you know, it's like, where is the pilot class? Where's the Republic or Sith pilot? Where's the fighter pilot? You know, if I could pick the fighter pilot, I would have played as him and nobody else, and I'll talk more about that later. But we're moving on from character customization to story and immersion. The Old Republic has a much richer class-specific storyline. All the different classes have something unique about them, a unique story to tell. Star Trek Online doesn't really do that very well. At the beginning of Star Trek Online, you're given the option to choose between tactical, engineering, or science, and the game never changes based on that selection. It's the same experience as everyone else, essentially, other than you have different abilities, and the tactical class doesn't really do anything interesting other than shoot at things. It really doesn't. The tactical class, kind of boring. But in the Old Republic, all the classes have their own things going on, their own goals, their own focuses, and it feels like your character actually has a point in this world and actually has like an end game, something they're working towards, something they want to do. You know, everybody's got a different agenda depending on which class you're playing in a party, so that's actually quite nice. It feels like a living, breathing world, and this is something we've come to expect out of BioWare. BioWare writes worlds. You know, they tell world-building stories, and this game is no different. Looking around, you know, the environments are full of life. They're well-designed and well-made, and there are so many things to run around and do in these worlds. Worlds, plural, Star Wars. That it really feels like it feels like you're running around a place, you know, as opposed to a map, if you know what I mean. Going back to the class-specific storyline, the Smuggler introductory storyline is fucking awesome. Essentially, what it comes down to, spoilers, is your Smuggler, a bunch of separatist forces have blockaded the Republic, a Republic planet called Ord Mantell, and they have essentially erected this island fortress. They've blown all the bridges to this island town, and have essentially set it up as their like fortress of doom, practically. And they're holding people hostage. And your Smuggler braves the separatist blockade, braves a massive space battle, blows through it to deliver a cache of weapons and supplies to the Republic forces who are desperately in need of it on the planet below. Shit happens, and your ship ends up getting stolen by this asshole, whose name I won't mention because I don't want to ruin it. Excuse me. Your ship gets stolen by this guy, and for the rest of your introductory storyline, you're working to get your ship back. And you know you're making underworld contacts. You're chasing him throughout the dark, seedy underbelly of the galaxy, and it's just as badass as it sounds. You're chasing down the guy who stole your ship to kill him and get it back, and it's fucking awesome. It's almost like GTA Star Wars, which is kind of the way it should be. My character is a smuggler. He's not a law-abiding Republic citizen. Of course he would be making tons of underworld contacts and doing all kinds of dirty work for them. You know? He's working his way across the galaxy to track down the guy who stole his ship so he can wring his fucking neck. So, that made sense. That was awesome. And it came to a screeching halt as soon as you got your ship. Because then you're introduced to the main quest for the Smuggler class. And, oh god, I was groaning immediately when this NPC who was on your ship for some reason started rattling it off to me, and it was the standard BioWare find X amount of things in X amount of places to find the lost treasure of Wacky Jack plot. It was it really was. If you've played BioWare games, you've played this plot before. You've played it a million times. You played it in Baldur's Gate. You played it in Neverwinter Nights. You know, you played it in Jade Empire. You've seen this before. I was like, oh God, really? That was so awesome. We're really doing this? We're really going this way after all of that? Because it felt like such a letdown now that I've gotten my ship. You know, now that I've done all of this, it felt like a real letdown to suddenly be forced to go through this kind of cliche plot. To like find some lost treasure of some guy I couldn't care less about. The only motivation I have to find this treasure is purely to screw over the guy who took my ship. You know, like, she's talking to me about this stuff. She's telling me, and my smuggler immediately transitions from kind of a nice guy, from a nice guy who's really reasonable, who's willing to lend a helping hand to those who need it, to the biggest asshole. While he stands there going, get the fuck off my ship, lady. You know, I was so sick of this. I was so put off by that. I was like, oh no, you were doing so well. So yeah, the main storyline is cliche. You can also see some plot twists coming from a mile away. This is generally a genre-savvy sort of thing, but it's also, again, a little bit of the old BioWare storytelling. I was playing as a member of a party of somebody who was playing a trooper, and over the course of his introductory storyline, he came across one of his teammates, this green-skinned female. And she was particularly brutal with a prisoner, and he kind of like went, oh, she's not gonna fucking betray me later, and I was like, yeah, that's totally not gonna happen. And of course she betrays him later. And again, that same chick who like tells you the hackneyed smuggler plot in the cargo hold of your ship as soon as you get it back, I'm going to quote her word for word after she tells you all of this stuff you need to know to find the 3 things you need to find Wacky Jack's lost treasure. And what she tells you to your face is, I'm not going to be upfront with you about everything. You'll just have to trust me as much as I trust you. No, you're totally not going to stab me in the back at the first opportunity. I mean, Jesus. What the fuck? You know? And she doesn't even become a companion. She doesn't even become a party member. So it's not like, you know... So it's not like I can trust her anyways. You know, it's like the game itself has spoiled it for me already. She's not a companion. She's not a party member. She's not doing anything important on this ship. You know, of course she's either going to betray me or end up dead. Oh, if she ended up dead, that would be fantastic. That would if she ended up dead, that would be hilarious and awesome. But like, you'll just have to trust me as much as I trust you. Dead. So, oh, that would be funny. But anyways, yeah, the smuggler main quest is really cliche. The thing about it, this is either a caveat or not, depending on how you approach role-playing games, is the character is fully voiced, meaning that it's really, like, things about his personality and such are really not up to you this time around. It's like Mass Effect, where you kind of choose the tone and not what he says, like you would in Knights of the Old Republic, where you chose exactly what he says. So yeah, it's very much like Mass Effect. You pick the tone of what he says, and he responds a few times in a way that you wouldn't have. Like, you'll pick the tone of a response thinking it'll be one thing, and it'll turn out to be something completely different. And, you know, the personality and everything is totally different, is totally preset. It's already present. So, in that regard, and I'm going to say that Star Trek Online leaves this up to the player to come up with. Like, you have no backstory on your character. They have no personality other than the personality you assign to them. So, I'm not saying which one is better than the other. Again, this is something that's going to be up to personal preference for you. Whether you like whether you like to have a free hand in creating your character and deciding how they act and what their personality is, or whether you want to decide it via pressing 1, 2, or 3 when the game asks you to pick the tone of how you want to respond. And again, there are times when, just like in Mass Effect, where you'll pick something thinking it means something else. It'll mean something completely different. You can screw yourself doing that. So once you get the game, be cautious. But I'm not going to say which one's better than the other. Again, personal preference. Fully voiced, again, but this comes with the caveat that listening through the drawn-out conversations can get very tiresome. Like I said, I was playing like 8-hour marathons of this game, and I got sick of listening to everybody's problems. By the time I was done playing this game, I was fucking sick of the voice acting, so be aware of that. Also, be aware that that's probably why why the install size is so big, is all the voice acting assets in this game. That's probably why it's such a huge install, and I'll talk about that later, because, oh god, this game is huge. This game is a massive install on your hard drive. It's a massive thing to leave sitting on your hard drive. But yes, fully voiced. And again, fully voiced, it can get tiresome. I can't say this enough. Because it's not just that it's fully voiced, it's that there's a lot of acting in the voice acting. So, yeah. By the way, though, David Hayter, Steve Bloom, Jennifer Hale, and the like, they are in this game. So, yeah. David Hayter, in fact, is one of the Jedi. I don't know who Steve Bloom is. I know he's in there, though. Steve Bloom is in fucking everything. But, moving on. Let's see, to ground combat. So mechanically, it's the same as Knights of the Old Republic. You know, it works kind of the same way. But some of the abilities, however, are hilarious. Such as the Smuggler Groin Kick. One of the things I loved about the Smuggler class is that they fight like dirty bastards. You know, they don't have any qualms about fighting dirty at all. And one of their abilities is literally to kick the other guy in the balls. And the hilarious thing about this is not only the fact that this is an actual ability, not only the fact that it has the most glorious crunchy sounding sound effect when you do it. The best thing about this ability is that it doesn't just affect men, it affects women. It affects robots with no humanoid anatomy whatsoever. If you kick them in the groin, they will fall over because of it. It was fantastic. I would actually look at the in-game chat, like the instance chat, while I was going through, and people were going like, nothing is better than kicking robots in the groin, dude. Nothing. It's awesome. I loved that ability. That said, the combat in general lacks a lot of impact. It's nowhere near as visceral as Star Trek Online. And I say that because while the ground combat in Star Trek Online is really love it or hate it, but the excuse me, but for the most part, when I hit somebody with a pulse wave assault, or even when I shoot at somebody with the dual pistols you can use in Star Trek Online, I can feel that. You know, I can see their health go down when I do it, and I feel, and you know, from the sound and the damage they do, I feel like I'm ruining this guy's shit, is what I'm saying. But that doesn't really happen in the Old Republic. What would happen was I would start hitting 1, otherwise known as the spam to attack key. I would start hitting 1 to attack, and excuse me. And my guy would start, or the left mouse button, because it has an aiming mode that's kind of like Star Trek Online's, and it's actually implemented much better than Star Trek Online's aiming mode is, too. I have to say. It really is. But I would start shooting at this guy, and what would happen is my smuggler guy would start firing this massive cloud of blaster fire at him. And every once in a while, the guy's health would go down. And that was it. It didn't feel visceral at all. It didn't feel... Excuse me. It's already starting. My throat's getting sore. We're only halfway through, too. Jesus. It's nowhere near as visceral. It didn't... I didn't feel... It didn't feel good. I essentially started spamming quick shot whenever I got into a fight, because that at least has a sound effect to it, and it's loud, and their health goes down when I do it, and it feels like I'm actually doing something against them. And this wasn't changed by the inclusion of dual pistols. This actually got a little bit worse with the inclusion of dual blaster pistols, because now I'm firing like this massive barrage of blaster bolts, and their health occasionally goes down. It's all based on die rolls, and it doesn't feel great at all. So, yeah. The combat is nowhere near as visceral. It lacks impact. And this always gets me when I get to this part. I wrote down... Okay, so next thing I wrote is Jedi are cock-blocking assholes. Apparently I was feeling really punchy when I wrote this. So... The Jedi are cock-blocking assholes, is what I'm trying to say. How do I sum this up? It's been over a week. It's been a while. It's been like 2 weeks since I played this, so you'll have to excuse me if I'm, searching my memory for this stuff. But, so, like in any other MMO, you would have quests that were essentially dispose of 50 of this asshole, or whatever, and you would go to do it, and, the way it works in this game, the way group combat works is, if you're not grouped with somebody, when that person initiates combat with a group of enemies, that group of enemies' life bars will gray out. And that means that group is essentially bound to the person who initiated combat with them. And that person is the only one who will get experience, or item drops, or or they will be the only one to move forward on that quest. It won't count for you if you kill one of these guys now. It'll only count for him. He's the only one who will make progress towards that 50 quest, towards that 50 kill count quest thing. Yes, that's what I meant to say. Yes, that's what I meant to say. Of course. You doubt me? I'm kind of hyper right now, in case you haven't noticed. Anyways. That's the way it works. Once you've initiated combat with a group, they're bound to you. And you're the only person who benefits from it. So, as I go towards an enemy group, I would be preparing to lob a thermal grenade into there, because that'll initiate combat with the entire group. And, but immediately before I would manage to do this, some Jedi motherfucker would force vault over me and start swinging his lightsaber wildly in the midst of their group, and that group would immediately, their life bars would gray out, and I'd be absolutely shit out of luck. And this happened all the fucking time. All the fucking time, and not just with enemy groups either. Let's say there's like a big container with contraband in it that you need to claim you need to go and use and claim to take back to this other guy. So you go over there to get it, and then yet again this Jedi motherfucker force vaults over it, right over your fucking head to open it, get the thing, and now you're stuck waiting for 15 minutes for it to respawn. Fuck! They take so long to respawn in that game. It takes so fucking long. It's such a long wait for shit to respawn, especially if you're fighting a mid-boss who's in the world and some Jedi asshole just killed him in front of you, and now you have to sit there and dive in cover and sit there waiting in cover with your two guns being held up in the air next to your head like a dumbass. I hated the fucking Jedi. I hated Jedi players in this game. I mean, of course, I played alongside some cool guys, on the S list and what have you. But for the most part, the Jedi are cock-blocking assholes. That was the biggest temptation for me to actually... I was sorely tempted to just stop playing Republic and roll a Sith character, just so I could fucking track down and fucking kill Jedi. That is... I hated Jedi so much in this game. They are going to be they will be such a plague. Here's my forecast for this game. A couple months from the game's launch, there are going to be entire websites of clans devoted... my accent slipped through a little bit there. Devoted to how much they fucking hate Jedi. Jesus, I hated Jedi. Ugh! Unless I needed their help, in which they were awesome. Yes. I'm a smuggler, so I don't have to give a shit about morality. Being a smuggler means I ain't too proud to beg. So yeah, Jedi are cock-blocking assholes. I can't believe I wrote that. But all in all, like, in terms of movement and everything, and the hotbar and everything, it plays a lot like WoW in space. Which is what I was saying before. It plays a lot like WoW in space. A lot like WoW in space. Right down to WoW's really cartoony presentation. The game has a really cartoony look to it. And I suppose that's okay, given the Clone Wars cartoon and all. I suppose that's fine. I can live with that. It fits. You know, it's really cartoonish, but it kind of fits the setting and such, so I can deal with that. And hey, they looked kind of weird in Knights of the Old Republic as well. That was just a technological limitation. But yeah, having the characters look kind of cartoonish also gives them artistic license, like World of Warcraft did, to keep the system requirements low. You know, we're not going for gritty realism here. We're not going for photorealism. We're gonna present a game that looks interesting and that people with low-end systems can play. And on that note, they succeeded. More on that later. Okay, so we're leaving ground combat and we're going to space combat. And right away, I'm going to say this: the space combat in this game, Star Trek Online blows it out of the fucking water. It really does. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the space combat in this game is still fun. It's just nowhere near as deep or interesting as Star Trek Online's. Now you have like your ship's item layout, like the amount of the kind of weapons you have equipped, the kind of armor you have equipped, etc. You know, the kind of shields. And don't be like me. When you finally get your ship, actually equip it before you take it into space combat, or you'll get the shit shot out of you like I did. Don't be like me, folks. But yeah, the customizability is nowhere as deep as Star Trek Online. And for those who've never played Star Trek Online, allow me to describe the ship customization to you so you'll know where I'm coming from. First off, you have the class you can pick, which will decide which kind of decides what kinds of ship you're more effective in using. And then you get your ship itself. For almost every tier of ship in the game, for almost every type of ship that's in this game, you have 3 ships you can choose from, whose parts you can mix and match. You can also apply different kinds of detailing to your ship, different kinds of hull materials. You can choose what kinds of interiors the ship has. You're really given free rein to design the kind of ship you want within the boundaries of what kind of ship it is. For example, you got you can choose what's a good example? The Sovereign. Let's use the Sovereign for example. You have a range of classes that look that are shaped kind of like the Sovereign. They have a similar profile, except for the Imperial, of course. But it's the Sovereign, the Majestic, and the Noble. And they all have the same general profile, but they all look a little bit different. And you can mix and match these parts as much as you want. So, and there is a large degree of customizability in there when you consider the sheer volume of ships Star Trek Online has by now. It has a crazy amount. They released a shit ton of them over the course of the last month. Jesus. But, yeah. Cough, cough. Then, so you've got your ship customized and everything. Then you've got your bridge officers, which will decide what kinds of not only what kinds of bonuses your ship can get, but also what kinds of abilities it can have. And I'm talking about like divert emergency power to shields, which buffs your shields, or torpedo high yield, which fires a huge salvo of torpedoes. All kinds of powers like that. And then you have the kinds of equipment your ship can equip. You know, what kind of deflectors, what kind of like console items that boost your stats in a certain area or give you different abilities. They added a bunch of ships to the Sea Store which have consoles which give your ship powers, of which the Woglinde now has 2. Which are the antimatter spread and the saucer separation, was turned into a console. And before it was a latent ability. Now it's an actual computer console that can be equipped and unequipped. My cough. It beckons me. And now you have duty officers, which apply passive buffs to your ship, like reducing the amount of time transwarp takes to recharge, reducing the cooldown period between uses of like emergency power to shield and evasive maneuvers, giving you more ship power whenever you use emergency power to shields, clearing off boarding parties when you use transfer shield strength, things like that. So there's a very deep level of customization to space combat and your ship in Star Trek Online. In the Old Republic, you get a ship, you're stuck with that model of ship. You know, the way it looks, you can't change it. You can change the equipment on it. Excuse me. You can change the equipment on it. I can feel it. My throat hurts now. I've been talking for so long. You can change the ship's equipment. You can change the... that's literally it. There isn't even any interior functionality. There's actually less interior functionality in the ship than there was in the Knights of the Old Republic games. There is no workbench in the Old Republic ships, which I heard someone say, then it fails when they heard that. And it kind of does. It kind of sucks. The most functionality you get is a cargo hold, which, to be fair, does put it ahead of the Star Trek Online ship interiors, because those are largely non-functional unless you want it changed to a shuttlecraft, and you only need to do that for like one mission in that entire game. Having access to an item bank from your ship is very handy and very convenient. So yes, in that respect, it does put itself ahead of STO in terms of the interior functionality, but you can't change the interior at all, unlike STO, and you can talk with your companion, you can give them gifts, sort of raise their affection level for you, but other than that, the interior functionality is very limited. It's slightly better than STO's. The space combat is very, very, very simple. And it's essentially, while playing the space combat now, I was keenly reminded of the gummy ship sequences from the Kingdom Hearts games. I was very reminded, and let me describe them to you. You can move, you're on a set path. You're constantly on rails throughout the whole thing. You can only move up or down, left or right, or diagonally. You know, you can move along this certain plane, but you can't accelerate or decelerate. You can't change your direction at all. You're forced to go along this predetermined path, and it essentially plays out like a level in Star Fox, but with even less control over where you're going and how fast you get there. And without the ability to do any kinds of maneuvers like the Immelman, like you can do in Star Fox, the loop-de-loop, you constantly end up getting people on your ass who will just shoot the shit out of you, and there's nothing you can do about it until they fly in front of you, which sometimes they never will. That said, it is actually very fun in a very arcade sort of way, and this is one of the reasons why I think there should have been a pilot class in this fucking game, because I found myself having a blast with the space combat in the Old Republic. It's very simplistic, but it's still quite good. It's still very fun. In fact, Like, once I heard of the smuggler storyline, I made the decision that when I eventually do get this game, I'm going to play to the beginning of the smuggler storyline. I'm going to play it to the point where I get my ship. And then I am never going to touch the smuggler's main storyline. Instead, I'm just going to visit these planets, and I'm going to, like, do the various side quests there, you know, and I'm going to sell my services to this Aegis fleet that you're inducted into as soon as you get your ship, that you can take missions from and basically sell your services out as a soldier of fortune, which is what I intended to do because I'm a fucking smuggler. You know, I would purely specialize in the space combat missions in the game. That would be my focus when I played, because they are very exploitable. You get, like, the same amount of experience you get from a space combat mission, you get it the same amount of experience from whenever you turn in a quest you've just completed. So it's, you know, it's very much, I could just keep doing these and keep leveling up. I don't need to touch the main storyline, nor do I want to. And this is what I was talking about when earlier when I was saying, where is the pilot class? Because if there was a Republic pilot or Sith pilot class that specialized in these missions and the space combat missions, I would play as them and nobody else, because I had a blast with these. You know, they're limited, they are simplistic, but there is complex. But for how simplistic they are, there is still some complexity in your mission objectives. Like you have a list of objectives, like destroy X amount of fighters, destroy this special ship that'll fly through, destroy X amount of turrets. Especially on the space station raid mission. I forgot what it was called, but there's a mission where you raid this space station. You're constantly buzzing around it, shooting down the turrets and everything, and you're on a timer for all of these. You only have a very limited time to get this done. And so it's very much a game of memorization, of playing things over and over again until you get it right. And, you know, just like in Star Fox, just like in the Kingdom Hearts PS2 game. You know, there was an element of memorization to both of them, and I enjoyed both of those. I know I'm a freak of nature because I enjoyed the gummy ship sequences in the Kingdom Hearts PS2 games. But if I had the option, if I had the option of a pilot class, I would just play as them and specialize in the space combat missions completely. They were very fun, and this is why I think it was an atrocity that there's no pilot class in this game, like there was in the old Battlefront games. Especially Battlefront 2, where I loved to hop into like an X-Wing or Y-Wing and give my fellow players some covering fire. But yeah, that's the space combat. It's not as complex as Star Trek Online, but for what the Star Wars games have always kind of been about, which is the Death Star trench run, which is the sequence on Hoth, those are always in those games. It doesn't really need to be as complex to get across that same feeling. That same feeling from the Star Wars games. You know, go play like Rogue Leader if you don't understand what I'm saying with the Death Star trench run. You know, it's all about that. It's all about flying through the second Death Star at the end of Return of the Jedi. I almost called it Revenge of the Jedi. Damn it, my two trilogies are getting confused, and one of them sucks. But yeah. It's all about that, so it doesn't really need to be as complex, although it certainly could have been. BioWare does not have a very good track record with space combat, though, as people who've played like the KOTOR games know. You know, the Knights of the Old Republic had like a couple turret sequences where you fought fighters that just buzzed over you, and it was supposed to be like the Millennium Falcon fighting off the TIE fighters after escaping the Death Star in A New Hope, but it totally wasn't, you know, like that. They don't really have a great track record with, like, straight-out space combat. But, for what this game is, the space combat is good. It's just really limited. And in terms of complexity and depth and freedom of movement, Star Trek Online blows it out of the water, though. So, yeah. Graphics now. Moving on to the technical side. My PC is from 2006, and it can run the game at low settings. I know, holy shit, my computer is ancient. That's one of the reasons why I'm not getting this game immediately, is because I either need to upgrade this thing or get a new one. Even the low settings, though, look fantastic. It's very playable. It still plays, just not well. Environments are varied and look fantastic. Coruscant looks spectacular by speeder. You have like speeder bikes you can take, which will take you on these like predetermined routes through this place, wherever you are, and you'll get a good look at the eye candy. And Coruscant looked amazing. I was living out my like sketchy Blade Runner fantasies on Coruscant, essentially flying through this city in like a flying car and what have you. It was very much like the architecture during the speeder chase on the air speeder chase on Ilium in Mass Effect 2. BioWare likes their Blade Runner, and it shows in the Coruscant environment. It really does. And especially, it doesn't hurt that the area that you go through in Coruscant is very grungy looking almost. Is very dirty and dark, because you're playing as a smuggler, so you're going through the vicious underbelly of the galaxy dealing with these guys. So that felt fantastic. That looked amazing. The interiors are huge, though, just like in Star Trek Online. They're both MMOs. What are you going to do? It's not just a concern with like the in-game camera. It's also a concern with how many people are going to be there at once. So yeah, the interiors are huge. Get used to it. The graphics are surprisingly cartoony, but again, I talked about this earlier. It fits the setting, and so are Stowe's. So yeah. However, the 20 gigabyte install is painful. Yeah, 20 plus gigabytes. It was like 22 gigabytes, actually, I think, on my hard drive. Yeah, it's a huge install file. It took forever to download the client and the game files, and it took forever to fucking install them. So if you're going to get this game, get the disc. Get the disc so you don't have to sit through that download. You can just install the game to your hard drive. And even then, a 20 gigabyte install from a CD, basically start it and then walk away from your computer, because it's going to take all day. It took all fucking day. It took from the morning of one day to the morning of the next. No lie. It took forever. So, yeah, that's going to hurt. And the 20 gigabytes it's going to take up on your hard drive, that's going to hurt too. So if you're really keen on getting this game and you don't have a lot of hard drive space handy, make preparations now. Go and buy a new hard drive. Go buy a second hard drive if you want. So moving on to music. The Tor soundtrack is fantastic. I'm going to say this right out. The Star Trek Online soundtrack is kind of bland at times because of the repetitiveness of the music, and it's occasionally a bit cheesy. It'll sometimes play at inappropriate times, and here's an example. Is I'm at this research facility where I am just scanning some stuff. Nothing is going on at all. Everything's fine, and then for no reason, this all-male choir will suddenly start playing in the background, going fucking crazy, losing its mind. And while occasionally there are some really odd, random... there's some really odd randomly playing music in Tor every once in a while, where you kind of cock your head to one side and go, really? That sounds really bad. Okay, maybe bad's a little strong. Out of place, we'll say it that way. But for the most part, it's very well composed. It will often play... Because the music in Star Trek Online plays all the time, the music in the Old Republic will play when it's appropriate for it to play. Like, a lot of the time there won't be music, or a lot of the time the music will simply be an atmospheric piece of music for a certain place. Which is, again, something Star Trek Online doesn't really have. For example, when you go to Deep Space Nine, the music that plays when you enter Deep Space Nine space is the same music as the title screen. It's the same thing in the login screen. It's not atmospheric at all. It just feels like they didn't have any music for this place, so they just reused it. It's not the Deep Space Nine theme, which is something that rankled a lot of people, was that, Deep Space Nine is a mass... For those people who don't know what Deep Space Nine is in Star Trek, Deep Space Nine was one of the most important places in the Star Trek universe. It was one of the most important places in the Milky Way galaxy. It was the focus of a massive interstellar war because of that. So this is one of the most important places in the Star Trek mythology, and they don't have any. And it was the setting for its own series, and that series had some of the most fantastic opening music of all of the Star Trek franchise, and they couldn't be bothered to actually get a hold of that. You couldn't be bothered to set this place to appropriate music. So yeah, the Old Republic doesn't have that problem. Most of the music that plays is atmospheric, and it is very fun, very pleasant to listen to. In fact, on their YouTube channel, and I'll include a link to this YouTube channel in the description, they are actually putting every day until the launch, they're putting music from the game up for download, and I would highly recommend you download that music and listen to it, because it is fantastic. There's also plenty of John Williams' original scores dotted throughout the soundtrack. Somebody said they heard Duel of the Fates at some point, so yeah, you got that to look forward to as well. So, closing thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and skip to closing thoughts because it's been like an hour. Both games are very enjoyable science fiction MMOs, but this might be the science fiction MMO some non-fans of either Wars or Trek have been waiting for. People who've played Warcraft, and yeah, there are people who aren't fans of either Star Wars or Star Trek. But this game is so open, and the Old Republic era is so unexplored at this point. It hasn't had nearly as much drawn out stories told in it as the Rebellion era, the after the Battle of Yavin era, with like the Thrawn trilogy, and then the Hand of Thrawn, and the New Jedi Order, and Legacy of the Force, and what have you. This hasn't had any of that. So, it has had some. I believe there was a comic series based off of Knights of the Old Republic, but yeah. This has been really unexplored, and it's a chance to really explore that universe at a period where it hasn't been developed nearly as much as, again, the post-Rebellion era has. Let's see. With Star Trek, also, again, a point I made earlier, with Star Trek Online launching free-to-play on January 17th to be specific, most science fiction fans now have the option to play both. You can play Star Trek Online for free, you can play Star Wars The Old Republic on a subscription. There's nothing stopping you from playing either of these games at the same time now, which is something that I find fantastic. And I'm certain a lot of other people do as well. Will I be playing this game at launch? No. I can't. I can't. I played this game for the beta, and I was getting so much chugging out of this thing. I was getting so much chugging out of it. It was slowing down so much that I really need to upgrade this thing before I can actually play this game on a regular basis. It worked okay, but it didn't work well, But if you have like a computer with low-end settings, a computer that's low-end at all, you'll still be able to play this. If I can play this, you can play this. Basically, it doesn't really matter how. If you have a computer that's even moderately modern, you should be able to play this game no problem at low settings. Yeah, so they've really gone the extra something. I'm sorry, I've been talking for an hour now. My throat's really sore. Ow. They've gone the extra mile in terms of making this game playable no matter what kind of computer you have. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on Star Wars The Old Republic. Is it a stow killer? No. It is certainly a very good game. Is it a WoW killer? Star Wars is a very loyal fan base. I wouldn't be surprised if WoW... I'm not going to say it's going to kill WoW outright, but I wouldn't be surprised if Blizzard and World of Warcraft started feeling the heat after the first year, if you know what I mean. But World of Warcraft itself is going free to play up to like level 20. Is that true? I think it might be. But yeah, free to play in general though is kind of the way things are going. It's kind of like the future of MMO gaming. I believe it was described on the Morgue, which was a show on Jupiter Broadcasting, the guys who do Stoked, where Jeremy Randall, who is now a dev for Cryptic on Star Trek Online, would talk about MMO games. And that's where I heard that World of Warcraft might be going free. I don't know. I might have heard it from there. Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if you've managed to sit through my mad ramblings for an hour and 4 minutes. Jesus. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Old Republic. Those are my thoughts on whether or not it's a stow killer. It's not. Yeah. I think that's it. I think my throat is really hurting now, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to render this, and I'm going to lie in bed and be sick. Ow. This is a bad idea. But I am getting better, so hopefully I'll be uploading a lot more stuff soon, and I will see you guys later. So, later.